and it's good for you. It's good for me. It's good to be with you, whatever this is. This is live without a net, right? Um, just thought I'd have a little hangout today to talk about stuff that's been going on this week. Good to see y'all out there in the chat. I'm going to attempt to pay attention to the chat as best as I can, so I'm going to get that called up here too. We do that. I might be smart, right? But hope your week has been going good. If you've been following me, I cut short a trip that I had to Florida, which not make me happy, but I needed to do it because I was just a little bit on edge about coming home in time for stuff I have going on this week with all this crazy FAA shutdown stuff. And chances are I would have gotten home okay this afternoon, but I just didn't want to risk it. So I jumped on a flight Friday morning early that happened to be a nonstop flight that got me right back here to Colorado Springs without having to go through the major hubs. So maybe that was smart. Maybe that was stupid. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Spinal Tap, the movie. There's a fine line between clever and stupid, and I'm not always sure which line I'm on, which side of that line I'm on. So today I'm just kind of hanging out. I'm working on stuff. If you haven't seen, I've got a live Zoom class tomorrow, I think noon Eastern. I'm going to be using Zoom because I'll be showing my workflow for editing and processing wildlife photos using Lightroom Classic, which is what I use 99% of the time. You can really improve your photos, and I'll be talking about some of the workflow tips, how to go through lots of images and do that. So I've been working on those, putting a few little charts together just so that I can have my bullet points. And then I'm packing for a little quick personal trip I'm taking to London later this week. That's the reason why I was getting home. So I'm trying to decide exactly what I should take on that, but I'm probably going to bring for sure this camera. So this is my somewhat svelte OM system, OM3. And I've talked about this one before, but this is just a great camera for traveling because it doesn't have the big bulky grip. It's pretty small. I just haven't decided what lens I want to use because this is the obvious choice. This is a 12 to 45 f4, and it's reasonably compact. It extends out when you zoom it, but it gives me the range of 24 to 90, which if you're in any kind of city, that's all you need. But I'm also toying with the idea of maybe throwing out on going with just a prime lens, and this thing is tiny. This is a 17 millimeter f1.8, and that gives me the equivalent of a 35, 36 millimeter prime lens. It's very fast. It's also quite small, which I like about it. So I don't know yet. I'm toying with different ideas, but one thing's for sure. It's November in London. The weather looks like it's going to be kind of London fall weather, which is, temperatures around 60 Fahrenheit and a pretty good chance of rain. So as far as bags go, I got this one a couple of years ago. This thing is fantastic. This is actually made in England. This is a Billingham bag. And what I love about it's a shoulder bag. You can rearrange your dividers in there, but there's plenty of room for a camera, lens, an extra lens, whatever, plus extra stuff because it has these front pockets. And this is the perfect size bag as a personal item to slide under your seat if you're not traveling with a laptop or anything like that. So that's cool. But the other really great thing about this is just it's really got a smart design. So it latches closed with these nice little leather straps here. That's kind of cool. But this material, which is sort of this heavy sort of canvas material, but it's not cloth. It's sort of a synthetic canvas. It's 2-ply. It's waterproof. And if you look, the cover extends over, the flaps extend over the bag. And I know that sounds silly, but you can walk around the rain with this and the water will not drip into your camera bag and get your stuff wet. And That sounds like a silly observation, but there are bags that don't have that, where the cover, doesn't quite cover the lid, doesn't quite go over the lip there, and it sometimes even diverts water right into the bag. Or then you got to deploy a rain cover, which takes up more space when you're packing for a trip, right? So this is just kind of crazy. And then it has, of course, my favorite thing ever, the trolley strap, right? This means that if you're carrying on a rolling bag with the tall handle, I can put it on the back. I've talked about that in previous episodes. So this is probably what I'm bringing on that. It's it's all good. Hey, I see some people have joined in. Hi, Susie. Hi, Lisa. Good to see you. Uh, really hope everyone is doing well on nice Sunday afternoon. So I'm looking out the window here, and it's like I said, this is kind of just my brainstorm episode. Uh, it's a nice blue sunny day, and the other day, it's funny. I was listening to one of my favorite albums by the Smiths, that I used to listen to a lot. The Queen is Dead, and there's a song in there called "Cemetery Gates," and it's typical Morrissey, right? It's this sort of depressing mode, and he says it's a dreaded sunny day, so I'll meet you at the cemetery gates. Um, Photographers don't always. It, it got me thinking about light and photography, and I'm looking at it. We have an absolute bluebird sky day, and if the average person were to look out the window, would say, "My goodness, it's sunny, it's clear, what a beautiful day." And as a photographer, I find that to be one of the more challenging situations to deal with when I'm out doing outdoor photography, because there's no clouds to add any kind of, impact to the sky. Um, can be challenging. Um, and yeah, it's so Morrissey, right? Lisa, it's just like, oh my God, Um, I'll just go to the cemetery. But it's a good song, though. You should listen to it. The Queen is Dead, one of the best albums, I think. One of my favorites, at least, and something I listened to on repeat a lot in grad school. Um, but shooting in bright, sunny conditions are actually really, really the worst sometimes. Because there's two kinds of conditions that photographers generally hate: no clouds at all and bright sun, because the contrast goes too extreme, or completely overcast, where the sky is just blank and white and it blows out. And both are challenging for different reasons. But I think about all the kinds of subjects that I like to shoot: um, animals, um, landscape, flowers, anything like with color, fall color, like right now, depending on where you're at. I mean, fall's kind of, the fall colors happen early here in Colorado. I have to say they were done probably by the second week of October. Um, and, the, but if you can get a partly cloudy day, some blue skies, but where the sun gets partially obscured so that you're not shooting flowers or fall colored or leaves in direct bright sun, you're going to find your photos are way, way nicer. And it's because you're getting diffuse light. And that's why the portrait folks, even when they're using a flash, you'll see them with these big diffuser soft boxes, they call them. So it's got a translucent fabric panel on the front, and then the flash goes inside. It softens the light. It makes textures softer, because you don't want really harsh light necessarily on photos, especially if you're shooting like a wedding or something, which I hope I never really have to do that. But you know, it's interesting how a photographer looks at light. And I started thinking about you know, people getting into photography and really liking it, and then getting themselves stuck kind of in a rut. Um, and I thought about that, and it's kind of like you get just enough knowledge to realize how to identify different kind of lighting scenarios, and then you start feeling like, oh, this light isn't good and I'm just not going to do anything. I won't even take out my camera. And part about being a new photographer, I think, is that you just don't care, right? You go out and you have a new camera, or even if it's a phone, and you just start taking pictures of everything, good or bad, and it doesn't matter. And I think as photographers, we sometimes forget that there's things. So depending on where you're at right now, you might have fall colors or maybe not. Maybe it's kind of gloomy weather. What do you do? Do you have any go-to techniques or you know mechanisms to get you out of a rut and take more pictures? Um, that's that's always something to think about. And for me, I'll I'll be honest. My crutch, so to speak, is going with a close-up lens, like a macro lens, even if it's not macro photography. Um, when I got my first autofocus film camera, um, I just had a an all-purpose zoom on it. So it was like a 28 to 300. It was kind of a tank too. It was a big old thing, but I had 28 to 300 go around with this. And this is when cameras were kind of still chunky because it was film. Um, and then I saved up some money and I thought, what is the next, what should I get if I'm going to buy one lens? And I was kind of trying to go down two different thought processes. One was I could get like a wider lens because 28 is not really very wide on 35 millimeter format. So I thought, well, maybe I'll get a wide angle lens. The other thing I thought was maybe I'll get a macro lens. And that's what I did. I got a 105 millimeter Stigma macro lens. And macro lenses, um, by definition, they are able to focus close, usually to a magnification of 1 to 2 life size. What I mean is, 1 to 1 would be the image is reproduced on the film or the sensor at life size. So 1 to 2 would be half life size. So something in that range. And this one did 1 to 1. Um, but one thing I discovered about macro lenses early on, especially the primes, is that they're really well made and they're really sharp. So you can use this as a portrait lens. You can use it as just, a short telephoto lens. You don't have to take close-ups with this thing. And they're just good lenses. So if there was like one lens you would have, you might think about getting a macro lens because if the weather's not great or you're just looking for subjects, getting close is really pretty fun. Um, so, those are things to think about. And, so let's say you're trying to get close to something, um, and you're shopping for a macro lens, maybe. What you're going to find is that they come in three distinct focal length classes. You've got your 55 to 60 millimeter equivalent macro lenses. And I say equivalent because the actual focal length could be a little bit shorter if it's a crop sensor. Um, but in 35 millimeter format, we're talking about 55 to 60 millimeter macros. We talk about the 90 to 105 millimeter macros. And then we talk about the 180 or 200 millimeter macros, and each has their use. So most people, and don't, this is completely reasonable. First thing you look at when you see a macro lens is the price tag. Okay. This is true. You look at how much stuff costs. And what you're going to find is the 55 or 60 millimeter equivalent macro lenses are the least expensive. This is true. They're smaller. They're not as complicated to correct with telephoto focal lengths and stuff. So, you might think that. The next ones tend to be the 90 to 105 range, and then the 180 to 200 millimeter macros tend to be the most expensive. But before you jump out and say, yep, I'm going to go buy that 60 millimeter macro lens because I can afford it, I want to bring something up. And that's something called working distance. And the working distance is how far away the subject is from the focal plane where your sensor or film is. And it doesn't factor in the length of the actual lens itself. And what you're going to find is that with the 55, 60 mm macro lenses, to get the normal, to get those close focusing distances, they're actually really close. They're really short. Um, you can think of it as you have to be maybe 5 or 6 inches away to get good magnification with a 55 or 60 millimeter lens. And that's great for that lens's intended purpose, which was not to take pictures of flowers and insects and leaves and stuff, although you certainly could. The intent of the 55 or 60 millimeter macro lens was for what was called copy stand work. And a copy stand was a stand that you would attach your camera to. It had a metal, shaft sticking up, and you could adjust the height of the camera. And the idea was that you were taking pictures of documents or something on said copy stand, coins or whatever. That was the idea. And so you didn't really need to have, it didn't really matter if you had to get a little bit close to that coin or whatever it was that you were taking a photo of, or documents, because they don't move, they don't go anywhere. And you were on the copy stand was almost like having a tripod. It attached the camera to it. So I generally caution my clients or people who consult me for advice on macro stuff. I generally go against the 60 millimeter macro equivalent if you're doing anything in terms of nature, outdoor, natural subject photography. So that brings me to the other two, which are far more useful. The 105, the 90 to 105 class, and most manufacturers not only have one, but the third parties make them too. And these are excellent lenses, no matter who you get them from. You can buy one from Sigma, from Tamron, from Nikon, from Canon, whoever. They all are good. And they give you a little bit more working distance. That means you could be a little bit further away, I'll use the correct grammar, a little bit farther away from your subject and get it in focus. And if you're taking pictures of things like flowers, maybe not so much in tiny little insects, but anything where you don't need to be 1-to-1, but you just need to be in close, a 90 to 105 millimeter macro lens will be your friend. And they're also, like I said, very sharp, and they're in that portrait photography focal length range. Sure, you might get a slightly faster lens for portraits, like Nikon makes a 105, 1.4, a 135 millimeter, for really shallow depth of field. But a 90 to 105 millimeter macro, if you're sort of an aspiring nature photographer, that's really a great choice. And I have mine. The one that I have in this class is the Olympus 60 millimeter. Now I said equivalent. So this is on micro four thirds. So the focal length equivalent is 2x what the 35 millimeter focal length would be. So this is a 60, meaning it's 120. It's an f2.8. And you can see that in this particular case, it's very, very small. But here, for example, is the 90 millimeter that they make, which is pretty similar in size to what you might find as a 90 to 105 millimeter macro lens in full frame. It's a little bit smaller, but they're going to be about this big. So not terribly huge to pack. But like I said, some of the sharpest lenses that I've ever used are those 105, 90 millimeter macro lenses. They're just deadly sharp. You can really tell how good your focus on when you use a lens like that. And so then finally we have this third size class, the 180 equivalent, or 180 or 200 millimeter equivalent. And it's interesting because they've kind of gone out of favor, it seems. I don't know why. You get really good working distance with these. So if you're looking at photographing um, things that are living things like insects, something like a 180 or 200 millimeter macro might give you a little bit better working distance, so that you're not shoving this lens right in their face and disturbing the insect or whatever it might be. They're a little bit too long for flower photography. You're going to find yourself having to step back a little bit. So I wouldn't use it for wildflowers or things like that. But a very useful lens. And it was an interesting story that a friend of mine told me once. He was a Nikon guy and he had all the stuff. And Nikon has a 180 macro, no, a 200 millimeter f4 macro lens. Okay. It's manual focus, it's manual everything. And they never came out with an autofocus version of, I think maybe it was autofocus, but they never came out with an updated one. They never redid the optics, added stabilization, any of the things that you might find in a modern lens. And this guy told me that that was one of the most sought after lenses by cinematographers. They would get adapters to mount this 200 millimeter Nikon onto their movie camera, on their cinema camera. And he said it was because it was just one of the sharpest, most well-corrected lenses that they ever made. So with a 200 millimeter or 180 macro, you can get a little bit farther back. You can get some interesting subject isolation because, again, somewhat shallow depth of field. This one is I don't even remember what this is. I think it's like f3.5. It's where does it say it on here? I gotta look at my lens alphabet soup. Yeah, it's f3.5. It says it right there. I should have looked at that first. So pretty cool stuff. So again, I'm just talking about things that you can do if it's sort of a gloomy day, rainy day. And for me, the my sort of safety blanket, if you will, is a longer focal length and just going in and getting in tight and looking for close-ups, whatever it might be. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. You never know. But that's kind of what's been going on. Um, so I don't know how much longer we have on fall colors. I would imagine if you're down south somewhere, like in Georgia, you're probably still getting fall colors. So if you're going out for those, again, look for that partly cloudy day if you can, and bring your polarizing filter to get the glare off of the leaves. That'll help out a tremendous amount. So one other thing. So I'm going to have I got to schedule I do a Zoom live hangout on Zoom for my paid subscribers. So I appreciate you guys. It's one of those perks, if you will. So we can hang out and you can actually, we don't have to use the chat window to talk. But I guess the holidays are coming up, and people ask what's a good thing to have, and I do have a fun thing I want to show. I got this last year, and I love it for just having a fun accessory. And this doesn't matter if you shoot with a phone or a DSLR or a fancy camera, and that is the Fuji Instax printers. And you can get these. These are great. Fuji makes Instax cameras which are kind of like Polaroid cameras. You take the picture and then it spits out, and you have the film packs are actually the prints. I don't really go for that. They're kind of bulky, and while it could be a fun novelty, that's fine. But Fuji also just makes the standalone printers, and what I think is so cool about this is that they're Bluetooth. They connect to your phone via an app, and any picture that's in your camera roll can be printed, and you just beam it over to using your phone. I would demonstrate, but my phone is what I'm talking to you with right now, and it goes over to this printer, and they come in different formats. This one is the Instax Wide, which has a slightly larger aspect ratio, slightly larger print, and it spits out just like a Polaroid would the picture, and you get these cool little get these these prints. Now, this is a picture that I took when I was down in Hilton Head of I think this is a piping plover, and I just transferred the photo from my computer, or even you can do it from your camera if you have the app, your camera's app. Transfer the photo to your phone, to your camera roll, and then select it. And then the really fun thing is that you can put text and stickers and even a custom QR code right on this. So, like, let's say you're at, you're doing something, and this QR code actually links to my Substack homepage. So it gets you right to the photographer's perspective. So, go over and subscribe if you haven't, because, you get fun stuff like this. But what I really like about this is that it's totally fun. If you've got cell phone pictures, or you're having your Christmas party, or family's over for Thanksgiving, hey, just go fire up your Instax printer, and you can do multiple copies. I think each pack of film uh, is about, I don't know, costs like $10 or something. They come in a box like this. It comes in a pack. You get this, foil sealed pack of film. Pop it in there and do that. The kids love it. Um, watching the Polaroid kind of develop, it's very cool. And like I said, you don't need to use your camera, your phone's camera, as long as the picture's in the camera roll itself. You can just select it and then do whatever. So you can use them to stick in holiday cards or whatever. And so I've done that. It's fun. The quality is reasonable. Obviously, it's going to have a traditional kind of Polaroid look, but you can also do some different styles in the Fuji Instax app. If you want to make them look more vintage than they already would, you can. But these are fun. You can stick pictures on your fridge again, and you don't have to worry about sending out for 4x6 prints. It's just it's a fun thing. And these printers are not expensive. I think you can get this for, I think they sell for somewhere around $120, $130, and that's often with one or two packs of film included. I'll find it online and put in a link to where you can get these. But as with many things, Fuji is using uh, the razor blade model. They probably take a loss on the printers, and they make their money back with the film itself. So Fuji Instax, this is the Instax Wide. I think it's really really fun, and they make a great gift, because everybody's got a phone, and so even if you don't have a photographer in your family, even if it's just cell phone pictures, um, this is a fun way to print them out. I think it's really cool, actually. So just something to think about. So trying to think what else be going on this week. We're getting into that time of year where it's getting darker, and well, you probably, I don't know if you've seen my photos that were my favorites of the year, but if you're a subscriber, there's a post that I made, I think a week or so ago, which had a gallery that you can look at some of my favorite photos of the year, and most of them are wildlife pictures, but there's also photos from Iceland and other places. And the thing about this time of year, we just had daylight savings. Well, we went back to standard time, so we fell back. So we're now on normal time. So it gets dark pretty early, which for me isn't the worst thing, other than it's midnight at 6 o'clock. I hate that. Um, but if you're out somewhere, a lot of people want to take pictures of holiday lights, or just the architecture when it's lit up. And I've said it before: the absolute best time to take pictures of buildings at night, or whether it's a Christmas display or otherwise, it doesn't have to be, just any kind of night photography, is 20 to 40 minutes past sunset or before sunrise. But I'm going to tell you why sunset's a little bit better in this case. It's easier. First of all, you have to wake up. But In urban areas, most cities use, you know, a lot of mercury vapor lamps, halogen vapor lamps, which are pretty orange looking or yellow, and they light up the buildings with incandescent or fluorescent, whatever lights. But a lot of times it's sort of yellow to orange light, and yellow orange complement blue really nicely. They make a tremendously good color contrast. So if you go out, and you can be somewhere with your tripod usually, but not necessarily, right about 20 to 30 minutes after sunset, that sky gets dark, but not black. So it starts getting darker and darker and darker, and it goes from being light to light blue to darker blue to midnight blue. And at that point, the sun is down. So you don't have the massive contrast that you would get um, during even a sunset where things might be backlit. You got a lot of things in shadow. The dynamic range is difficult. No, after sunset or before sunrise, everything is sort of a nice uniform contrast. It's low contrast light. It's soft, but the colors are amazing. So if you go into my gallery on that post that I made, look at some of those photos. I think there's at least one or two in there of like the big church in Reykjavik and stuff. And those are blue hour photos. And they're just some of my favorites. So if you're thinking about doing any kind of like night photography, I don't like photography at night. When the sky is black, it's just not great. But when the sky is midnight blue, it's magical. So there's only one real downside of that, is that you have to be prepared for it. And it doesn't last for very long. It lasts for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, depending on which direction you're pointed, where you get that magical blue hour, we call it sometimes. So um, it's a thing. It's a thing to try. So if you're in a creative sort of rut, go find somewhere. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular. Go out in the evening, right around sunset, and wait about 30 minutes. Bring your tripod because the exposures can get kind of long. That's okay. And just see what you get. And this works with your phone. I mean, it does work with your phone. You don't have to do this with your big camera and a tripod. You could just use your phone if you wanted to. But that's that's something to try. Add to your bag of tricks. Try a blue hour shot. Go find something somewhere that's illuminated in the night. And the other reason why I prefer the evenings for cityscape blue hour photography is a lot of times, at least here, um, the buildings will shut down most of their lighting in the morning, overnight. So they'll illuminate buildings all through the evening. Then about midnight, they start shutting that stuff off. So the best shots won't be at the early morning. They'll usually be right after sunset. So, you know, this is just what's off the top of my head on a Sunday afternoon, or I should say, it's still morning here. It's only 11 o'clock. I don't know what else is gonna happen, but I'm gonna be in London for a few days. My birthday's coming up, so I'm looking forward to that, and get a little time to just enjoy that, and then come back and get going. So there's a few little things out there for people if you haven't looked in a while. I still have space to go on a bird workshop with me. Two of them. One's in January in San Diego, California. Awesome. And then another one in South Florida, Palm Beach County. The I forget what. Uh, I can't remember the city, but it doesn't really matter. Just south of Palm Beach. There's some epic birding down there in the spring. That trip's in April. And then I hope you were able to watch the replay or live hangout that I had um, on whenever that was, on Thursday. I'm losing track of time. On Thursday with Catherine Haylett. If you didn't see that, it's amazing. So Catherine's an African safari leader. She's licensed. She went through all the certification to get trained to lead safaris in Africa. And she shared a bunch of her photos. And she goes to Namibia rather than the traditional Kenya, Tanzania, Botswana for safaris. And so she's put together a 14-night, 15-day African safari for me to take a very small group of clients to in October of next year. And so if that's on your bucket list, go check out that Zoom replay. It's in my it's in my postings. Um, and it's so cool. It's like a private. We'll have our own Land Cruiser, and she's hoping to be our guide and drive us around. She's been doing this for 25 years now, going down to Africa. So she knows all the back roads. She knows all the people. Namibia is what do we say? It's larger in area than Texas, but it only has 3 million people overall in the entire country. So it's very small in terms of population. So we're going to do all kinds of fun stuff out there, and I'm looking forward to it. So if that's something that it interests you, do check that out, because we have a very limited window of when we can get this early bird discount in place. And whatever, it's Africa. So bucket list kind of stuff. So if you tuned in, thanks so much. Thanks for hitting that little heart button. It makes me smile. I appreciate it with everybody. And I'm looking to do some more stuff, hopefully get some guests on the show, whatever, on the Hangout. And we'll see where we can go from there. So thanks again for tuning in. I'm Jason Odell. My Substack is The Photographer's Perspective. And that's where I'm blogging these days. So I hope to see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.